The glow is getting stronger.
Pour it in the stream, now.
What if it goes wrong? We have no choice.
The wind didn't just howl through Powder Pass, it hunted. It carried secrets, blood, and the kind of truth that buries towns if no one is brave enough to dig. Rosa Quinn had survived a war, but what waited in Ash Hollow would test her in ways no battlefield ever had. The wind cut through Powder Pass like a rusted blade, ripping across the Red Rock Canyon, until it screamed through every crack and seam of the mountainside. Rosa Quinn pulled her coat tighter around her, shoulders as her mare picked its way. Down the narrow slope, hooves slipping on loose stone. Dust lashed her face so sharply it felt like needles, stinging her eyes, her lips, her skin. 6 years had passed since the war ended, yet her gaze still tracked every shadow, every sudden shift of movement. The way soldiers learned to do when danger could come from anywhere and wear any face. That habit saved her. A scream tore through the air. Not a woman's cry. A man's pain, raw, deep, and desperate. Rosa didn't pause to think. Her hand went straight to her medical bag as she pressed her heels into her mare's sides. The sound echoed from below, near a half-tipped wagon lodged at the bottom of the trail. 3 miners crouched around a 4th man pinned beneath an iron wheel. They snapped their heads up as Rosa rode in. Suspicion and fear etched into their dust-caked faces. "Move aside," Rosa said, already swinging down from her mare. "This ain't your place," the oldest miner growled. "Ride back to town. Fetch Doc Morrison." "Doc Morrison's been dead 2 months," Rosa replied, dropping to her knees beside the injured man. "Unless you want him bleeding out while you argue, let me work." The trapped miner barely clung to consciousness. His leg bent at a wrong angle, crushed beneath the wagon's weight. Rosa pressed her fingers to his neck. "He's still with us." She looked up sharply. "You," she ordered the youngest miner. "Run to the saloon. Tell Marigold Hayes, I need clean cloth and whiskey, now." The boy took off at a sprint. "We can't lift that wheel," another miner snapped. "It's too heavy." Hoofbeats thundered above them. Rosa looked up just as a massive black stallion barreled down the trail, stopping hard enough to throw up a cloud of dust. The rider dismounted in one smooth, controlled motion. Tall, broad-shouldered, gray eyes, sharp and unreadable. He carried danger the way a storm carried. Lightning. Quiet until it wasn't. Elias. "Crow," one miner muttered in relief. Thank the Lord, Rosa knew the name. Everyone in town did. Former cavalry scout, rancher, a man who kept his troubles, buried deeper than an old mineshaft. Elias took in the scene with one glance. "Need to cut the axle," he said calmly. "Joss, you got a hacksaw?" As the miners scrambled, Elias crouched beside Rosa. "You're the new midwife," he said. "Midwife," she replied without looking up. "And whatever else the town needs." She met his eyes briefly. "Right now, I need this man free." He studied her hands. Steady, sure. Practiced. "Military trained," he said. "Field hospital," Rosa answered quietly. "Pennsylvania 45th. 3rd Colorado Cavalry," he said. Their gazes locked for a heartbeat. Shared ghosts, shared grit. "On my count," Elias said, rising. "Lift when I say." The young miner returned with cloth and whiskey. Marigold Hayes close behind, worry-carving lines through her painted face. "That's Tom Brennan," Marigold whispered. "He's got 3 little ones. He'll see them again," Rosa said firmly. "Hold his head steady." The wheel lifted with a groan of metal and muscle. Tom screamed, the sound echoing through the canyon as Rosa dragged him free. She cut away the pant leg, revealing a crushed, bloody mess, but not the fatal bleeding she feared. "We can save this," she murmured. "You always this bossy?" Elias asked behind her. "You always talk when people are bleeding?" She shot back. She worked fast, cleaning the wound with whiskey, wrapping it tight, checking deeper damage. Tom drifted in and out, moaning. "We need somewhere clean," Rosa said. "The saloon," Marigold offered. Before Rosa could answer, a sharp voice cut through the wind. "And you, madam, have no authority to practice medicine in my jurisdiction." Judge Silas. Beckett rode in on a polished bay, 2 Pinkertons flanking him. Wealth clung to him like perfume. Tailored suit. Manicured hands, eyes cold enough to weigh lives like livestock. "Man's dying," Elias said evenly. "Then he should wait for a licensed doctor," Beckett replied. "Any further attempts by you," he pointed at Rosa, "will result in immediate arrest." Tom groaned. Fever spiking too fast. Rosa caught the scent on his breath, bitter, almond-like, not infection. Something worse. "You'd let him die for paperwork?" Rosa demanded. "The only justice that matters," Beckett said coolly, "is legal justice." Rosa stood. "Then the law is wrong." Elias stepped forward. "Judge, let her do her job," Beckett sneered. "You have debts, Mr. Crow. Keep your head down." He rode off. Rosa turned to Elias. "Help me get him to your ranch. It's closer. The judge's reach doesn't stretch onto private land." Elias hesitated, then nodded. "Fine, but we move fast." As they lifted Tom, Rosa caught the scent again. "Elias," she whispered, "we may have a bigger problem than a broken leg." Night bled into dawn at Crow Ranch. Rosa worked until her hands ached, cooling Tom's fever, stitching flesh, watching the sickness rise too fast, wrong. By morning, he stabilized. Rosa stepped outside into the cold Wyoming air. Elias stood by the fence. "You didn't sleep," he said. "Neither did you." She lowered her voice. "That fever isn't natural. I think the water's poisoned." His jaw tightened. "On purpose?" "I don't believe in coincidence." Before more could be said, hoofbeats approached fast. Marigold Hayes rode in, panic in her eyes. "Judge Beckett sent Pinkertons to your clinic," she gasped. "They tore it apart." Rosa's fist clenched. "They want me gone. They want you silenced," Marigold said. "And miners are getting sick. 5 more overnight." Rosa's stomach dropped. "That's not natural." "No," Marigold whispered. "And there's someone who wants to meet you. She knows the land. The water." "Who?" "Nia Two Elks." Rosa felt the wind shift. Something darker was coming. The ride upriver cut through land that felt tense, as if the earth itself were holding its breath. Rosa rode beside Elias in silence. The rhythm of hooves and the whisper of wind, the only sounds between them. The fear she carried wasn't sharp or panicked. It was heavy, settled deep in her bones, the kind she'd known in field tents, when the wounded kept coming and the night never ended. Ash, Hollow felt like that now, on the edge of something it couldn't survive unscarred. They found Nia Two Elks by the creek just as Marigold had said. She knelt at the water's edge, gathering reeds with deliberate care, her movements calm, grounded, as though the land itself spoke directly to her hands. When she rose, her dark eyes met Rosa's with unsettling certainty. "You're Rosa Quinn," Nia said. "I've been expecting you." Rosa glanced at Elias, then nodded. "You've seen the sickness," Nia continued. "My people call it dead water fever. It comes when the land is poisoned." Rosa felt her breath catch. "You're saying it's deliberate?" "Yes," Nia replied without hesitation. "Someone upstream has been feeding poison into the water for a long time, long enough that the ground remembers it." Elias stepped closer. "Can you prove it?" Nia opened a leather pouch, revealing dried roots and crushed herbs. "With your medicine and my knowledge, the truth will show itself." Rosa handed her a glass vial. They dipped it into the creek. When Nia added her mixture, the water darkened, then turned the color of bruised flesh. Rosa's blood ran cold. "Arsenic," she whispered. "A steady source," Nia confirmed. Elias followed the creek with his eyes, then stiffened. "Up there," he said, pointing toward a canyon wall where an old structure clung to the rock. "That's the Copperhead mine." Rosa swallowed. "That's where the water feeds the town." "They've been poisoning everyone," Nia said softly, "and blaming the land." Wind swept the canyon, carrying grit and warning. "We go at sundown," Elias said. "Shadows will hide us." Rosa nodded, fear curling tight in her chest. Not for herself, but for everyone she'd sworn to protect. They rode as the sun bled into the horizon. The Copperhead mine loomed like a scar, boards splintered, air heavy with a metallic stink that twisted Rosa's stomach. Inside, lantern light revealed crates and barrels stamped with symbols she knew too well from war hospitals. Poisons meant to weaken, not kill outright. "This was planned," Rosa breathed. Footsteps echoed. Elias raised his gun. A man turned from a ledger, lantern shaking in his hand. "Dr. Morrison," Rosa whispered, alive, terrified. "You shouldn't be here," he rasped. "Beckett forced me," Morrison said, voice breaking. "I signed death certificates. When I resisted, I disappeared." "Who's really behind this?" Elias demanded. "Eastern investors," Morrison said. "They want the valley, the water. Beckett just keeps the town quiet." Hoofbeats thundered outside. "They're coming," Morrison whispered. Shouts echoed. Pinkertons, armed, many. "We're trapped," Rosa said. "Follow me," Nia said suddenly, emerging from a side tunnel. Gunshots cracked as they ran, squeezing through narrow stone until the tunnel opened into a cavern glowing. Faint blue, water fell from above. "Through the waterfall," Nia urged. Cold water slammed into Rosa as she pushed through, lungs burning, until she stumbled onto solid ground on the other side. They burst into the night, hearts hammering. "They'll keep poisoning the town," Elias said. "We have to warn Ash Hollow." They rode hard through the dark. By dawn, smoke rose from the town. Screams carried on the wind. The Pinkertons were already there. Homes burned. Chaos ruled. "Get to the well," Elias shouted. Rosa didn't hesitate. Barrels were being hauled forward, poison ready to pour. "Stop!" she screamed, throwing a hook that caught a barrel just in time. A rifle cracked. The Pinkerton fell. Owen Pike stood shaking but resolute. The fight spread. Miners fought back. Nia and her people guarded children. Rosa dragged barrels away, coughing on fumes. Then a trumpet sounded. Cavalry crested the ridge. The attackers scattered. Ash Hollow still stood. Rosa found Elias bloodied but alive. "What now?" he asked. Rosa looked at the town she'd chosen, her voice steady despite the tears burning her eyes. "Now we heal." Ash Hollow didn't feel like a town anymore once the smoke settled. It felt like a wound that had finally stopped bleeding but hadn't begun to heal. The cavalry moved through the streets with practiced efficiency, rounding up the last of the Pinkertons while townsfolk stood in stunned clusters, clutching each other, staring at the wreckage of homes and businesses that had been standing only hours before. Rosa moved through it all like she was back in a field hospital, stepping over debris, blood, broken glass. Her senses narrowed to what needed doing next. She tore strips from her own skirt to bind a miner's arm. She knelt beside a woman shaking in shock and held her until the tremors eased. She didn't stop. Not when her legs burned. Not when her head throbbed. Not when exhaustion tried to pull her under. Elias stayed close, sometimes fighting, sometimes lifting, sometimes simply standing between Rosa and danger without a word. It was instinct for him, the same way healing was instinct for her. When the last gunshot faded and the square finally went quiet, Rosa found herself at the well again. The rope creaked softly in the morning breeze. She rested a hand against the stone rim, steadying herself and let the reality settle in. They had stopped it. Not all of it, not everywhere, but here, in Ash Hollow, they had stopped it. Morrison was brought in under guard, his shoulders slumped, his eyes hollow. He handed over ledgers, letters, contracts, names Rosa didn't recognize but could feel the weight of. Eastern money, distant hands. Men who would never see the faces of the people they nearly killed. Federal officers listened grimly, already planning what came next. Judge Beckett was found later that morning, trying to flee through the southern pass with a satchel of documents and gold. He didn't look powerful then. He looked small, furious, afraid. As they dragged him past the saloon, his eyes locked on Rosa. "This town will rot without men like me," he hissed. Rosa met his gaze without flinching. "This town nearly died because of men like you." They took him away. The crowd watched in silence. Then slowly, almost uncertainly, people began to breathe again. The wounded were laid out in the saloon and the church. Rosa moved between them, her hands sure even when her heart felt too full. Tom Brennan was awake by afternoon, pale, weak, alive. When he saw Rosa, his eyes filled. "My kids?" he whispered. "They're safe," Rosa said gently. "You'll see them soon." Outside, Elias leaned against the hitching post, his sleeve dark with dried blood. Rosa finally stopped in front of him, the adrenaline draining away so fast it made her dizzy. "You're hurt," she said. "It's nothing." She gave him a look that had made grown soldiers obey without question. He sighed and sat. She cleaned the shallow gash on his arm, her touch careful, familiar. "You could have walked away," she said quietly. "When Beckett threatened you, when the mine showed what it was." Elias watched her work. "So could you." She tied the bandage and looked up. "I've seen what happens when good people walk away." He nodded once. "So have I." As evening crept in, the town gathered what was left of itself. Fires were put out. The poisoned barrels were hauled far from the well. Nia and her people worked beside Rosa, using herbs and poultices where supplies ran thin. There was no divide then. No whispered suspicion. Only shared labor and shared fear slowly turning into something steadier. Hope, fragile but real. Later, when the injured slept and the streets finally quieted, Rosa stood at the edge of town, staring out at the darkening plains. Elias joined her without speaking. The wind moved gently now, no longer screaming, just whispering through the grass. "They'll come back," Elias said at last. "Men like that don't let go easy." Rosa nodded. "Maybe not here, but somewhere else. Another town, another hollow," she exhaled. "I can't fix the whole world." Elias turned toward her. "No," he said, "but you fixed this one." She smiled faintly, the weight of the last days pressing in. With help. He studied her face, the stubborn set of her jaw, the weariness in her eyes. "You planning on staying?" he asked. Rosa thought of the road she'd walked alone for so long, the war, the losses, the way Ash Hollow had crept, under her skin without her noticing. "Yes," she said simply. "This place needs a healer." Elias's mouth curved into a slow, quiet smile. "Good," he said, "because it could use someone who doesn't scare easy." She laughed softly, the sound surprising her with how much relief it carried. "Careful," she said. "I might put you to work." "I already am," he replied. Night settled over Ash Hollow, heavy but calm. Lanterns glowed in windows that still stood. People slept, truly slept, for the first time in days. Rosa lay on a cot in the saloon, too tired to dream, listening to the wind outside. It no longer sounded like a warning. It sounded like a promise. The night after the fighting passed without gunfire, but sleep still came in fragments. Rosa woke before dawn, the way she always did, her body trained by years of listening for cries that meant someone needed her. Ash Hollow lay quiet beneath a pale sky, the kind of fragile calm that felt earned rather than given. Smoke still curled from a few chimneys where fires had burned too hot or too long, and the scent of ash mixed with clean morning air. She dressed quietly and stepped outside, boots crunching softly on dirt and broken glass that hadn't yet been swept away. The town looked wounded, but it was standing. That mattered. Elias was already awake. He stood near the corral, fastening a loose board, his movements slow and deliberate, as if he were grounding himself in simple work after days of chaos. When he noticed her, he paused. "You should rest," he said. "You say that like it's an option," Rosa replied, though her voice held more warmth than bite. She walked closer, watching the way the sunrise caught the lines in his face, the scars he didn't bother hiding. "The water," she said. "I want to check the well again before people start." Drawing from it, he nodded immediately. "I'll come." They walked together through the quiet streets. A few townsfolk were already stirring, moving carefully, like people afraid to disturb something delicate. At the well, Rosa lowered a bucket and drew up the water, studying its clarity, its smell. She tested it again with the last of Nia's herbs, clear, safe, relief. Loosened something tight in her chest. "It'll take time," Elias said, "for people to trust it again." "I know," Rosa answered, "but they will." They always do, eventually. Nia joined them not long after, her presence calm as the creek she followed. "The land will heal now," she said, "but it remembers. You must remember too." Rosa met her gaze. "I will." By midday, federal officers finished taking statements. Morrison was led away, his shoulders bent, his eyes never lifting from the ground. Judge Beckett followed later, bound and furious, shouting promises and threats that echoed hollowly against the hills. No one answered him. Ash Hollow had stopped listening. The rest of the day blurred into work. Rosa reopened what was left of her clinic, setting broken shelves upright, salvaging what tools remained. People came steadily, not just for wounds, but for reassurance, for someone to tell them the sickness was truly gone. She did, again and again, until her voice went hoarse. Elias appeared now and then, bringing water, food, quiet support. As evening approached, the town gathered in the square, not for speeches or celebration, but simply to stand together. Someone lit lanterns. Someone else began to sing, softly at first, then stronger as others joined in. Rosa stood at the edge, overwhelmed by the simple fact of survival. Elias found her there. "You did this," he said. She shook her head. "We did." He studied her, then stepped closer, his voice dropping. "You could leave now," he said. "No one would blame you." She looked around at the faces she'd fought for, healed, nearly lost. "I'm done running," she said. He reached for her hand, tentative despite everything he'd faced. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned in, resting her forehead against his chest, feeling the steady proof that he was alive. "Woman," he murmured, a rough smile in his voice. "You're going to ruin me," she laughed softly. "Good," she whispered. "We've got a lot of work left." The wind moved through Ash Hollow again, but it no longer cut like a blade. It carried the sounds of life returning, hammers, voices, laughter edged with grief but not ruled by it. Rosa Quinn stood in the fading light. Midwife, healer, survivor, no longer just passing through. She had chosen this place, and it had chosen her back. Ash Hollow would bear scars, but it would endure. And so would she.